Ever feel like funerals are, well, a little too quiet?
Yeah.
Like somber and quiet, yeah. Today's deep dive throws us into a fascinating tradition that, well, flips the script on mourning.
Yeah, throws it right out the window.
We're talking about the Abanyole people of Kenya
Mm-hmm.
and how they use vibrant, energetic music and dance to honor their loved ones.
That's right.
So it's not about dwelling on sadness.
No, not at all. For the Abanyole, death isn't an ending, but a new beginning. They believe it's a journey to another realm called emakombe and silence. When someone passes away, the community immediately comes together at the family's home, and instead of hushed tones and solemn faces, they break out in song, dance, and yes, even wailing.
Wow, that's quite a different vibe from what I'm used to.
It is.
But you mentioned differences between how men and women participate. Tell me more about that.
You've got men often carrying sticks or clubs, rhythmically striking the ground as they chant, almost like they're challenging death itself. It's this raw, powerful display of grief and defiance. Then you have the women, moving with incredible grace, their hands on their heads, their backs, their bellies, as they sing these mournful songs.
It's like choreographed grief, almost like they're physically guiding their loved one toward emakombe. But from what I understand, this is just the beginning, right? The real event is the night before the burial.
Yeah, you could say that. Now things get really interesting. Imagine, as night falls, musicians gather and the mood shifts. The music picks up tempo, people start dancing, and woven into this performance is an element of friendly competition. Think of it more as performers boasting about their skills, challenging each other to pour their heart and soul into the music and dance, all to honor the deceased. But as the night goes on, you'll hear the tempo increase, symbolizing the continuation of life and the belief that death is not the end, but a new beginning, both for the deceased and those they leave behind.
So it's not just a funeral. It's a celebration, a community gathering, a way to process grief, celebrate life, and reaffirm the strength of their community in the face of loss.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
The okokoma is a fascinating and elaborate ritual, but it's not for everyone.
Right.
It's reserved only for the most respected men in Abanyole society.
Really? Only men? That's fascinating. Tell me more about that.
Even in death.
Right.
For these men, death wasn't just a transition, it was a procession, a grand event designed to guide their spirits safely to the okokoma, with its energy and intensity, is specifically designed to reflect a man's stature in life and to confront any potential obstacles on his journey to...
That makes sense. So for these respected men, the okokoma is a 4-part performance, a ritual drama with very specific acts. Where do we start?
Okay.
Exactly.
This first act is called okuchisia, and during this part of the ritual, they're actually retracing the steps of the deceased. They visit all the places that held significance to him in life, and as the procession approaches the deceased's home, the energy begins to shift. This is where the second act, the esalemba, begins.
Okay, so they're heading back to the homestead. How does the energy change?
The music intensifies, horns blare, drums beat wildly, the singing grows louder, and they even incorporate war cries into the performance.
War cries. Hold on, that seems like a pretty intense way to arrive at a funeral.
It's all part of a symbolic battle against any obstacles, any malevolent spirits that might get in the way of the deceased reaching. Exactly. It's about protection and guidance. And this heightened energy sets the stage for the most intense part of the Okuhuliana. This third act takes place within the deceased's compound, and let's just say, things get even more lively.
Lively.
If you thought the run back to the house was intense, this is where the performance really hits a fever pitch. Imagine this. The dancers, caught in the frenzy of the moment, whirl and spin, brandishing spears and shields as if engaged in combat with unseen forces. It's all about warding off any lingering malevolent spirits that might threaten not only the deceased spirit, but also the well-being of his living family. They see it as a final act of protection. That's a great way to put it. But after the raw, almost chaotic energy of the Okuhuliana, the final act, the Likapo, offers a much-needed moment of calm and reflection.
Okay, good. Sounds like they've earned a little peace after all that.
The frenzy of the Okuhuliana subsides, the music softens, and the dancers move slowly and deliberately around the deceased's compound, singing their final farewells.
It's interesting how this entire ritual takes you on such a journey, from the mournful processions to the almost violent energy of the Okuhuliana, and then ultimately to this place of stillness and peace. It's like a microcosm of life itself, wouldn't you say? So we've talked about the dancers, the music, the movement, but what about the visual elements of okokoma? Is there a specific dress code for this kind of event?
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right to ask about the visual aspects. For the Abanyole, everything about the okokoma, from the costumes and makeup to the sheer number of performers and instruments involved, carries deep meaning and reflects the social standing of the deceased. For example, if the deceased was a respected warrior, you might see performers draped in leopard skins, their faces hidden behind fierce masks, carrying intricately designed spears and shields.
Okay, you've got me really curious about the music now. We've talked about these incredible processions, dramatic dances, symbolic battles. None of it works without music to set the mood. What kind of instruments are we listening for during okokoma?
You're right, the music is the heartbeat of this entire ritual. And for the okokoma, the real stars of the show are the horns, specifically the asilipa and the owika.
Okay, two different types of horn.
The owika is the long horn, the one with that deep resonant sound that you can probably hear echoing through the entire village.
Yeah,
It's a sound that commands attention.
I bet you can feel it in your chest.
But it's also a key instrument throughout the okokoma, almost like a guide, leading the different movements of the ritual.
It's like the conductor of this incredible orchestra of sound and movement.
And then on top of the horns and drums, you've got the jingles, shakers, even fiddles, all coming together to create this incredible wall of sound that's both mournful and celebratory. It's about celebrating a life well lived and ensuring that the deceased's spirit has a smooth transition into the next world.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the fascinating funeral traditions of the Abanyole people.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
As always, thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, remember, life like a good song is meant to be celebrated.